All right, let's turn our attention to other stories. Nigeria's inflation rate has continued to accelerate, complicating the task of the central bank in an economy which is already at risk of contracting.
Simply put, Nigeria's inflation has yet again hit a record high. The country experienced a decline in her GDP for more than 3 quarters consecutively. Records show that the country's GDP has been in steady decline since the fourth quarter of 2015, as the year ended with a meager growth rate of 2.11%.
Now let's listen to what analysts have to say on this.
Inflation actually makes nonsense of what you have in your pocket. It also makes nonsense of your investments. That's the thing. You'll find out now that rent, money in the stock market, everything has lost automatic value. It's as good as you are devaluing the naira.
All right, you listen to that. Now with us in the studio is an economist, Sonny Omeza Michael. It's good to have you. He is a senior economist with the Nigeria Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Nice to see you. You're welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
Now, in the minds of Nigerians, a lot of things going on with the economy here and there, recession and all of that. The government has come out clearly to say there is hope. We're doing everything possible to ensure that things normalize and so on. But Nigerians just want to see the money they have in their pockets. When they take it to the market, you can buy things the way it's supposed to buy. The cost of things are not beyond their reach and all of that. But if you sit down and watch how things are playing out, how better or worse is the situation going?
Well, we same things, and government making pronouncements that they want local production and all of this to resolve so many of the challenges we have, diversification of the economy. But I think government needs to do more in making sure there are policies and there's a machinery in place for this local production of food, especially. The September inflation at 17.9, it was broadly caused by food prices. And if we want to resolve this, it means that we must target food. In developed economies, food is one of the cheapest items. It's basic, and so it's cheap. And because of that, it takes away a lot of pressures. But in Nigeria, for instance, unfortunately, food is expensive. We also see that the September figure was also caused by school resumption. Statistics from NBS, National Bureau of Statistics, shows that stationaries, food prices were much of what caused what we have in September inflation.
For the month of September?
Yeah, so school resumption was part of it. And outside that, any item that has to be imported with the forex crisis that we're currently experiencing, definitely sure is going to cause some inflationary pressures. So we've had all of this, but the hope we are going to really have is to see government really go into action to see that, in the next 6 months from now, we're going to have enough rice for Nigerians at least. And then we can ban importation of rice. They did something like that recently when they banned importation of rice, and we saw the price of rice going above 20,000 naira per bag. And when they saw that if we continue like this into December, surely it will go beyond 30, 40. So they had to reverse the policy. Now, why am I saying action is very important here? If while government made a pronouncement that, look, we want to encourage local production, some investors, private sector investors may have gone into production of rice, and way in between, in the middle, the policy is reversed. This is what we've seen over time, and it always affects investors' confidence. Government is making this pronouncement, so how are we sure that in the middle of the game, the rules
So a lot of policies of assault is not really helping the situation.
So it's not helping. So if we're going to see something better than this, we want to see government actually go into action with its policies and actually see how we produce food. So we can say, oh, let's leave the borders for now, because once you close the borders against what you don't produce inside, the forces of the market forces, the forces of demand and supply, naturally will determine prices going up.
And reversal of the policy you were talking about, the custom actually came out and said the borders are still closed to importation of rice.
For the land,
for the land, yes.
Yeah.
So the sea is free, but the land is. And we had the PRO of customs, and I asked him, at the end of the day, people still smuggle this rice in, even though there's a ban.
Okay.
And at the end of the Nigerians pay the brunt for it, bear the largest brunt for that, because they still want to eat this imported rice.
Yeah.
Hence,
government will lose revenue.
And government will lose revenue, and Nigerians
that.
will pay more. Then will cry about inflation rate. So, is a loss, no win-win.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think generally we feel that importation is a sin, but economics teaches that you produce what you have competitive advantage in. So what you don't have competitive advantage in, you are expected to import it. If we know for now we don't have the capacity to produce rice for local production, to meet local production, who will advise? Let the borders be open, bring in the rice, but let's give a time of 6 months or 1 year to say, look, Nigerians, don't worry. 6 months from now, you will not eat imported rice again. That helps. But when you trying to maybe impress, because we always feel that when you say local production is a populist idea, when you say you are banning import, it's something that everybody feels good about. But like I said, importation is not a sin.
All right.
We can actually import until when our local production system is strong enough to meet our local demand.
All right, but from your perspective, are you seeing any strategy from government that is geared towards lifting Nigeria out of the recession they are in right now? Are you seeing anything?
Well, definitely. We see there's no government that will actually fold arms and say, well, we don't have anything to do. Like, they're going to release some 350 billion naira into the economy to reflate the economy. But you see, there is still the internal problem that needs to be resolved. The food, if the 350 billion may be for contractors' fees, whatever, salaries, that will still be some more money chasing still fewer goods. So I'm expecting that in October figure for inflation may be higher than what we have again.
Which is a classical definition of inflation in the first instance.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be higher. I'm expecting it to be higher because the forces causing this increase are still there. The forex crisis, which is causing a lot of pressure, is still there, and we don't know how soon it will abate. We see government trying to do a lot. Today they try to liberate and make it a bit more flexible, but it's not as free as it should be. And because of that,
so it means they're still being experimental with all strategies.
I would say so, because we saw recently they banned some banks from selling forex, and within a week they saw the exchange rate crisis and they quickly reversed. Recently again, they've banned almost all the banks except First Bank from selling forex to BTCs. But I can assure you very soon again, they may reverse it. So they need to take a point. If we want to tackle this food problem, let's see how we face it and get it. If we say government is not good with business, so they should not go into business of producing. But I see some states in the east, like Ebonyi, for instance, producing rice and looking for other states to collaborate with for distribution and all of this.
Yeah.
So I think we should do that on a larger scale. At the end of the day, let's have more food for Nigerians. It will solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, talking about food, the aspect most of the time we don't take a look at is the post-harvest loss that will record in Nigeria. It's so high. You don't produce much, but the little you produce, you can't even conserve or preserve.
Yeah.
And of course, if you tie that to electricity, epileptic power supply, maybe even forex, even to even get some of these things in for food preservation. What do you make of that?
Yeah, like I said, if we don't have the technology with us now. There's no sin in bringing in the technology, food processing and storage. We need them, but again, like you said, a bigger problem out there that at times is scary to talk about is the power. We talk so much about it, at times we just try to ignore it because it's like talking and you are not sure if anything can come out of it. If there's no power actually again, even when you bring in these storage facilities, no matter how perfect and excellent they are, you don't have power. Storage has to do with power. So it's still going to be a lot of trouble. But let government be able to say, look, if farmers produce anything, at the end of the day, we are going to buy your products. So a farmer knows that there's no matter what worst case scenario, I will break even. So it encourages people to go into it. But today, for instance, I see some arrangements that I see today, people living in Lagos getting whatever grants or whatever for farms in the villages. I don't know how they coordinate all of this, but I think we really need to come down to eat fully. Food is causing a lot of problems, the scarcity of it, and because of that, a lot of other things are going haywire.
Okay, we'll come back to this. Now, let's give you a basic foundational information about some of these things. Now, inflation is a very common word, but it's the continuous rise in the prices of goods and services as measured in Nigeria by the Consumer Price Index. It is often described as a situation where too much money is chasing too few goods.
During inflation, the currency loses purchasing power. For example, assuming the cost of buying 4 tubers of yam is 2,000 naira, that price will be doubled during inflation. So that means you buy that for 4,000 naira. There are basically 2 causes of inflation. First is a surge in demand for goods, and this is known as demand pull inflation. And then the second is a rise in cost of goods due to decrease in supply. That's usually caused by a rise in the cost of production and perhaps increase in taxation. It's called cost push inflation.
All right, now inflation rate in Nigeria averaged 12.15% from 1996 until 2016. Now it reached an all-time high of 47.56% in 1996 and a record low of minus 2.49% in the year 2000. Now year-on-year inflation rate has continued to increase since beginning of the year. In January, it stood at 9.6%. It rose to 11.4% in February and 12.8% in March. It jumped to 13.7% in April, and in May, it skyrocketed to 15.6%.
So it jumped to 16.5% in June. For July, it rose to 17.1%, and in August, it went to 17.6%. Rising though. And now for September, which is the most recent, the inflation rate stands at 17.9%. Let's go to Forex issue. You remember one of the CBN policies said, okay, for the manufacturers, will release 60% of Forex to them.
Okay,
allocation.
Yeah.
That will help. We're talking about production, that will help. Was that a misplacement of priority? Because if you judge from when it was introduced till now, what effect would you say in terms of growth, in terms of output and production? Has it helped?
Well, the news came with some form of jubilation for some manufacturers. But again, we were actually thinking, now, how do you define a manufacturer? How do you identify a manufacturer typically in Nigeria? It was a case. Now, what they were trying to do was to see, at times I see these policies as trying to use them to buy love from the populace. Oh, they are supporting manufacturing. Now, if you want to support manufacturing, the same manufacturers have input to their manufacturing that are in the among the 41 items prohibited. Yeah. Now, if you even give them this money, I mean, they are not supposed to use this money also, this Forex, to import these things, and they need this input for their manufacturing, for their production lines. And this was why some associations have argued, look, remove so there are some critical inputs, remove them from that prohibition list, so that when these have the Forex, they can get these things to keep their lines moving on. We have the case of tomato paste trouble that recently came up, and some of them are crying that things are very hard for them. They are supposed to be part of this. They are supposed to be part of those to enjoy this 60% special allocation. But now they are shouting that, look, there are some critical inputs that they cannot still import. So when these policies are being put in place, there should be some form of analysis ahead. To look, if we do this, this will likely happen. If it happens like this, it will not be good. So let's think. So there should be.
So you have a scenario of the projections.
Yes.
All right. Now,
before you go into such.
Let me ask you this. The point there is, Nigeria has said, oh, the global price, the crashing of the global price of crude oil is one of the reasons why we are in this situation. The bombing of pipelines and ex-militants are not allowing production. But the point there is, the records we have now, there's some level of stability. And in production of crude oil, at least things are normalizing now. And then the global price of crude oil is also coming up. We have not still seen an impact. So when are we going to see the impact of that directly on the economy?
Well, when we looking at the price, if we look at where the price has fallen from, is massive, and it will take some time to. We don't know how fast it will go, but I think, for me, government should take off its mind from where it will go up or not, and drive the diversification policy through. That we need now. We should have done it earlier. This is the opportunity. Yeah, we should have done it earlier, but we missed it. But now I don't think we should have any other chance to miss it again. We should go ahead with the diversification policy, make it very practical, and think it through. Any way it needs some refining, let it be done, but let it be seen through. That is, for me, where we should go. And let's do as if, of course, we cannot ignore oil, but let's leave oil.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Sunny Omeza Michael, thank you very much for coming on the program. We thank you.
Thank you.
All right.